Hi, my name is Dr. Darren Schmidt. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I just read this book. And I need to share some information with Travis and Dominic and Pedersen and Youngko and Thomas Seyfried, and you can share this with whoever you want to share this with. But in this book, we're talking about ketosis to kill cancer cells and the ketogenic diet for all of its benefits. And I've been studying the old teachers, going back to Otto Warburg's time. Here's a book called the Avitaminosis. This is the third edition, 1944. And what I've learned is that prior to World War II, all the studies were feeding studies, and they studied nutrition and what food deficiencies cause what diseases. And I have this book, 1911, The Fasting Cure, from Upton Sinclair. And so we had Otto Warburg at that time. Let me put some books down. And I have a quote, okay, from Travis's book that Otto Warburg said, and I'm going to state that quote right now. Bear with me. Okay, he said, to prevent cancer, it is therefore proposed first to keep the speed of the bloodstream so high that the venous blood still contains sufficient oxygen. Now I'm going to go over this and show you what that means. Second, to keep high the concentration of hemoglobin in the blood. That's related to this. And then third, to add to always add to the food, even of healthy people, the active groups of the respiratory enzymes. And then Travis says in the next couple of paragraphs, the respiratory enzymes are B vitamins. So Otto Warburg is saying to take in B vitamins. And it's related to this. Now, this is Otto Warburg. And then I have a quote from cancertutor.com, which is a great website. The guy who runs that website has experimented with over 600 cancer treatments. And this is what he says. He says, lactic acid is the main component of the deadly cachexia cycle, i.e. lactic acid cycle, which kills about half of all cancer patients. Lactic acid is a major cause of pain. It blocks nutrients from getting to the cells, which is why many cancer patients are weak. And then in bold on his website, front page of his website, dealing with the lactic acid and the microbes in the bloodstream should be a top priority from day one after the diagnosis of cancer. Orthodox medicine never does this. Cancertutor.com. So he's saying lactic acid kills half of the cancer patients. Now I had a patient, I'm a chiropractor, and I've been doing hardcore holistic nutrition for 19 years. I had a patient, I saw him for several years, and then he quit coming to see me, and then I heard through the grapevine that he got a brain tumor. Well, I called him up, he came in, and he laid out his supplements on my bookshelf, and he pointed to colloidal silver, and he said, this got rid of my brain tumor. He was drinking like 5 or 6 shots a day, and the MRI showed all of his cancer was gone. And so, I was very excited for him, really happy for him, congratulated him. I recommended a couple more supplements. This is a number of years ago. And then he left my office, and 2 months later he died. So with the information that I know now, I know he died from lactic acidosis. He was somewhat, I would say, very depressed. He was drooping. He had bad posture. He walked very slowly. He was tired. There wasn't any emotion in his voice anymore compared to when I knew him from a few years earlier. So he got rid of his tumor, but the lactic acid killed him. Okay, I have another quote here, and it's from a guy named Dr. Henry Harrower. He's the father of endocrinology. And I have his book. Give me a second. Here's his book, Practical Endocrinology, 1931, 650 pages. It was so popular they had to do a second printing in 1932. This is the foundation of endocrinology. And this is what Henry Harrower says about lactic acid and the lactic acid cycle. Regarding endocrinology, it may be said that every form of cellular inaction, whatever the endocrine cause, produces acidosis. Therefore, when endocrine defects are known to exist, it is wise to look for acidosis or demineralization. So back in 1931, they thought that potassium or other minerals solved lactic acidosis. Later, Otto Warburg said it was B vitamin deficiency. And they're both true statements. And then later, I'm going to tell you about Dr. Royal Lee, 1934, what he said about lactic acidosis. So bear with me. Freeing the organism of acid waste by chemical neutralization from the minerals not only reduces the acidosis, but also lessens the burden of the endocrines that we are attempting to assist. This measure thereby cooperates directly with the endocrine therapy. Now, back in the 31, endocrine therapy was eating organs, organotherapy. So if you had a bad thyroid, you eat thyroid. Okay, last paragraph here. Since acidosis is such a very common feature of dyschronism, which meant endocrine dysfunction or endocrine disease, it will be necessary to refer to it in a number of the chapters that follow. So, he's talking about this 650-page book. He mentions lactic acidosis throughout the book as a mechanism, as the mechanism of chronic disease that always needs to be addressed. Okay, so now I got this book. It's a collection of articles written by a guy named Dr. Royal Lee. Back in the time, he was born in 1895, died in 1967. His mentors were from the late 1800s. He studied whole food nutrition, and he figured out really how to fix lactic acidosis. So minerals played a small part of it. B vitamins, yes, but I'm going to go into exactly what he says. So I'm mentioning this because in Travis's book, he mentions Ivar, Y-V-A-R, the young guy from, oh boy, I believe it was Switzerland, who had a liver cancer that took up 95% of his liver. And the kid was very near death, and he was the first person to receive the 3-BP drug from Young Co. And over the course of 6 months, he got stronger, and all the cancer went away. And then at the age of 18, he had died from pneumonia, actually from antibiotics that they gave him for pneumonia. And in the book, he mentions that the kid's liver was weak and needed support. And there was also in the book the story of the woman who was older. She had cancer, she did ketosis, and it got rid of her cancer. But after about 4 months, she ran out of gumption or energy to continue on the ketogenic diet, so she just gave up. And then their cancer came back and she died. And so she ran out of energy and brain power and will to survive. She lost her energy. I'm sure she was very fatigued. She had lactic acidosis. Ivar, the kid, had lactic acidosis. And they have the solution for it. So let me show another book. Give me a second. Okay, here's another book. This is 1938. I'm reading these books. These old school doctors understood how the body worked. Otto Warburg. They knew how cells divided, and they knew how they faltered and died. Lactic acidosis being part of it. Ketogenic diet being part of the solution. Here's more from Royal Lee. Now in this book, these are articles that go through 1961. Now in 1961, Royal Lee was he went to the U.S. Supreme Court and lost his case. He's got a vitamin company, and at the time, drug companies and the AMA were really strong, and they were just squashing nutritionists and herbs and supplements. Royal Lee lost his battle in the U.S. Supreme Court, and he was told never to talk about his supplements again. He was forced to sign a document saying that he wouldn't talk about his supplements ever again, and he died like 6 years later. But in 1960, 1959, 1958, he wrote articles summarizing the previous 6 decades worth of information on how to repair the body regarding arthritis, mental health, cardiovascular, all that. And it's all lactic acidosis. That is the single most common mechanism of disease. And so he studied it extensively beginning in 1925. He did his own feeding studies on top of these other books that I showed you and other research articles. And in 1925, he started the production of a supplement for lactic acidosis. This is his first supplement he ever made. And I have it right here. It's called Cataplex B. And it's still in existence. It's the same recipe from 1934 when he introduced it. And so this company, Standard Process in Wisconsin, has its foundations and original recipes still in existence. They're still making it. And those original founding products, there's about 50 of them, they all address lactic acidosis. So their ligament support supports ligaments and tendons and fixes lactic acidosis. Cataplex B nourishes the nervous system and does many other things, and it fixes lactic acidosis. Their heart support product, their digestive product, their sugar balancing product, they all address lactic acidosis. That is the fundamental mechanism of chronic disease in the body. Here's what it is. It's the lactic acid cycle, also known as cachexia. Cachexia means in ancient Greek bad habits. The bad habit is eating sugar. Sugar consumption or lactate consumption or pyruvate consumption or production in the body by the cell creates the waste products known as lactic acidosis, lactate, acetate, acetaldehyde, and ethanol. Those are the 4 waste products. And then they go to the liver to be processed. Lactate becomes pyruvate again. That's the lactic acid cycle. Okay, so the problem is if you have cancer, this is accelerated, and then you get a buildup of lactic acidosis. Now, the other thing is you can have a dysfunction of the liver, like Ivar, the kid, and then this is blocked, and the liver can't clean the waste, and it can't convert lactate back into fuel, so you get a buildup of lactic acidosis on this side. Cancer patients are dealing with both. There's an increase of waste and garbage in the body. Then here's what happens. The waste products, I'm going to put my marker down. Here's L for lactate and lactic acidosis. Here's O for oxygen. The waste products, lactic acid goes up relative to oxygen. The oxygen could go down by itself. This goes up. Either way, this is what happens. That makes arteries dilate, which is normal when you're exercising. But if you're just sick, the arteries dilate, circulation slows down. As opposed to when you're exercising, circulation speeds up. So this happens, arteries dilate, circulation slows down. Now you have capillary engorgement with toxic and hypoxic blood. And that's directly from Dr. Royal Lee. He says capillary engorgement. And now you have cell death at the capillary area. So when muscle cells die, they tighten up. That's called rigor mortis. So some people get just a little bit of tightening here and in the heart, and they get anxiety. They get the diagnosis of anxiety. Okay, or they get the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, like women. If you get the capillary engorgement of toxic hypoxic blood causing cell starvation in the brain, then you get these crashing thoughts of anxiety, depression, bipolar, fear, worry, doubt, violent thoughts. And if you get capillary engorgement of toxic and hypoxic blood causing cell death through cell starvation in, let's say, the prostate, now, let's say for 5 hours, now those cells become cancer cells, as described in Travis's book. And Thomas Seyfried, I have your book, and I've skimmed through it. I'm going to dive into it. So the solution is fix the liver and ketogenic diet. And then hyperbaric oxygen therapy, baking soda, ozone therapy, and other things here address this symptom. Lactic acidosis is a symptom. So how did Dr. Royal Lee create the right supplement to fix lactic acidosis? The ingredients in here include liver and wheat germ oil and there's also nutritional yeast. Okay, now there's about 25 or 30 ingredients in here. It's a long list. But I mentioned those first three because those are the main supplements or food. Those are the main foods with all the B vitamins. Here's the kicker. Back in the 1930s, the researchers like Otto and Royal Lee and Henry Harrower, they all knew that there were 22 B vitamins. Maybe there were 24, they thought. So they thought 24, not quite sure because they hadn't studied it all yet, but there were probably 10 more. So let's say 34. And then Royal Lee said that those 34 B vitamins complex with each other to form 50 to 100 B vitamins. So if you go to the health food store and you get vitamin B1, 2, 5, 6, and 12, there you just got 5 B vitamins in a multi-B complex. You're missing 85 B vitamins, maybe. We don't even know because people quit studying this back in the late 50s, early 60s. The 60s were bad decades in healthcare. I think we can all agree to that. So, Ketopex B also has beetroot in it to make sure the gallbladder is working well, because the gallbladder works with the liver. It's got porcine duodenum. It's got animal glandulars and plants. So duodenum for better digestion. It's got choline, which flushes fat out of the liver. It's got carrot and sweet potato for all the vitamin A, which is back, in the 30s, they called that the anti-infective vitamin A, plus all the hundreds of other nutrients that we know of in carrot and sweet potato. It's got rice bran in it. That's filled with B vitamins. And that's the original problem back with the polishing of rice and the bleaching of grains back in 1915, 1920, 1925. People lost all their B vitamins because these grains were polished and all the brown was taken out. Well, the brown, that was B vitamins. So in 1934, B1 was synthesized for the first time. It was put into food, and that stopped beriberi. So at the time, the medical researchers, at the time, they're like, yep, we just solved beriberi. We're heroes. We're done. And B1 did it. Well, and they dropped it. But then later they discovered, well, there's B2, and maybe some people need B3 and B5 and B6. They skip B4. They skip B13. They skip B25. And we just kind of stopped with all the B vitamin research. But you got to get them in the foods. You get them all in the foods. And there's not one single food that has all the B vitamins. That's why you got to have the rice bran, the wheat germ oil, the liver, the nutritional yeast. That's how you get all 50 to 100 B vitamins. I'm not going to go through the rest of this. But anyway, so I'm going to tell you about a patient I had. She was diagnosed with lung cancer that metastasized to her brain 2.5 years before she saw me. And based on cancer as a metabolic disease and the seminars I've attended with Dr. Dan Pompa, you know him. I'm a student of Dr. Pompa. I put her in ketosis. She was doing intermittent fasting every day, eating all of her food from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. From 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. High fat, low carb, juicing during her eating hours. And at week number 6, she got her MRI at the University of Michigan Hospital, and all of her tumors stopped growing, and there were no new tumors. The doctors were just dumbfounded. Okay, and then 6 weeks after that, so we're talking 3 months, the next MRI, or whatever imaging she had, PET scan, I don't know what her imaging was, showed all the cancer was gone, and all the arteries feeding the cancers were gone, lungs and brain. So she was cured of all the tumors. Now here's the thing with lactic acidosis. At week 6, when her tumors stopped growing, she told me she still cried every day. She was still very fatigued, and she couldn't look people in the face. And she couldn't answer my questions. I would ask her a question, and she would turn her head to her friend who was helping her. And so I was always talking to the side of her head. So week 6, I was like, okay, let me put this together. I thought about this, and then I remember, I've been selling this for many years. So I put her on Ketopex B, and by the next week she felt better. she said she was crying less. And at the end of 3 months total, she was done crying, and she could look me straight in the eyes, and she was making jokes, and it solved her lactic acidosis. So without the Ketosis B, without the liver being healed and the lactic acidosis going away, her life was miserable, regardless of cancer tumors. So the point here of this video is to tell you that back in Otto Warburg's day, the doctors were a lot smarter than they are now. The research was feeding studies. They had the whole food concept down. Animal glandulars were not a scary thing. Endocrine therapy was organotherapy, meaning feeding people organs to heal the organs. They knew how to do medicine right. And then came World War II, and then came, the 60s with the LSD and all that stuff. I think our whole culture went downhill. So this is a missing piece regarding ketosis and resolving the cell and resolving cancer cells and cancer and the condition of cancer. So yeah, ketosis for this part, and then we got two more parts of lactic acidosis, and now there's a relative of Ketosis B called Ketosis G, and I can go more into that. But Roy Lee, he knew it. He figured it all out. And then the U.S. Supreme Court squashed him, and the AMA squashed him. So I'm going to give you my email address, or you'll get this email, but Dr. Dr. Schmidt, MIDT, at THENHCAA.com. Stands for The Nutritional Healing Center Ann Arbor.com. I have a 1-hour video on my YouTube channel on lactic acidosis and how medications cause it and how white bread causes it, and I just go into more detail about it. So just go on YouTube and search my name. I'm going to write my name down here, so I should have thought about this earlier. Darren Schmidt, chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic. Been doing hardcore nutrition 19 years, and I'm trying to see how much good I can do with nutrition and diet alone. No medications. I barely do any chiropractic. Everybody they see goes on nutrition programs. I've been having people count their carbohydrates for my whole career, getting their carbs low. But in the last year or so, I'm raising their fat intake way up. I'm measuring people's ketone levels in their blood using the Precision Extra. And I hope you find this valuable. I'm available for communication.